Live from the Motor City, all the way to the Volunteer State. It's time for the Reckless Speculation Podcast, where we recklessly speculate the latest news in the world of sports. From college football to NASCAR, we've got you covered. And don't forget to stick around for the world-famous Bet Your Nuts, where we will give you your best bets to make the most money. Now sit back, grab your favorite drink of choice, and join Robbie Davis, Raj Mehta, Brandon Chain, and Tom Sloan. It's showtime. Good evening, everybody. Yes, you're looking at a different host tonight. My name is Tom, and welcome to the Reckless Speculation Podcast. We're a little short-handed this week. Robbie Davis and Brandon Chain are both on vacation, enjoying the beach, I'm sure. Drinking copious amounts of alcohol, I would presume. So it's just going to be me and Raj today. And actually, the plan originally was we weren't going to do a show this week. We were going to take a break, but Raj had a lot on his mind. So we decided to throw it together. So we're going to do maybe 45 minutes, get you guys going into the NBA draft. So that's what we're going to lead with. Bradley Beal gets traded to the Suns. We'll hit on that. There was also another trade tonight that we'll touch on. Going to hit a little bit on the Bob Huggins deal. You know, what is going on with that guy? And then we'll close with the Bet Your Nuts and final words. So without further ado, Mr. Raj Mehta, what is up tonight? Raj, you had a pretty busy night, huh?
Yeah, man. It's been a busy week between traveling and, you know, as I mentioned to you all, you know, we're all big dog lovers on the show, and our 16-year-old Rosie passed away Monday night.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
No, I appreciate that. It was one of those things where her quality of life was so low.
Yeah.
But, you know, she was a survivor, her first owner. She was a rescue that abused her physically and blunt force trauma to her face, and it caused her to lose her eyeball. And no one ever knew who he was. But if I ever found out who he was, I'd probably go to jail for life. In the shelter, she was so protective of her puppies. One of the other dogs remembered, ended up finding her in the mouth of that big dog after the puppies were adopted. So she's a survivor, and we gave her a second life, a rebirth, if you will. And we do find solace in that. Old or not, it's never easy, as you know. And, but no, my other girl, Phoebe, who's been on this show, you know, when it kind of got to me when it finally hit her. She was like scratching the blanket, trying to get her to play with her and whimpering, like, what's happening? And that part, damn, man, I could have done without that. But hey, death is a part of life, man. And she's in a better place now. And that's actually the truth. So
now, did you have her put down, or did she go naturally?
No, she went naturally. And for those that, you know, we don't have this as a sponsor, but, you know, I reached out to something I found online called Lap of Love. And it's actually, I believe, a national service that basically coordinates with local veterinarians in your area about home euthanasia and whatnot, because we couldn't deal. She got scared enough with the cold table and them taking blood, you know, for holding her for 2 days to tell us what we already knew. So she had kidney issues as well. Yep. So, and they were super comforting. And we almost went that route. And I had to go to Nashville the following morning. And I don't want to say fortunately, but she did pass while we were both there.
Okay.
And so that was all, you know, in a world of shitty circumstance, that was the least of the shittiest. And those, but no, I appreciate it, man. She was a fighter. So
I had a cat that had almost 16 years, and she had kidney failure, and we were supposed to take her to the vet to be put down. And that morning she went, literally, I had her in my arms and I said, "You can go." And she took one last breath right in my arms. And it was to say it was magical. I don't know if that's the right word, but it was surreal to know that you were with her, or I was with her at her last breath. And then you were the same with your dog. So, I mean, and then shortly thereafter we lost the dog. So yeah, I mean, it's never easy. They're your family, and I don't have children of my own. So the animals were near and dear to me. So My condolences to you and your family this week. I know it's never.
Thanks, bro. I mean, it's the journey, not the destination. Some people get torn up by that stuff. My mom is one, and I try to remind her, like, I'll take any day with that dog than, just dealing with the consequence of the afterlife. So,
sure.
Yeah, part of life. And then and Nashville and birthday party today and all that good
all
stuff.
all over the map. And so we did have to push this back a little bit to make sure that we got on. So before we go any further, I do want to highlight our sponsors for the show. Davis, Keller and Davis. Our own Robbie Davis is part of that law. From what I gather, they're a pretty good law firm, and they're always up for law firm of the year in Chattanooga. So we're glad to be a part of them. And C&W Construction, Mr. Brandon Chains. So we are definitely happy to have them as sponsors. And don't forget, we're always powered by Jack Single Barrel. So pour yourself a glass, whether you like it dirty or do you like it on the rocks, whatever. I prefer mine on the rocks. I don't know. I don't drink it very often, but when I do, it's got to be cold. So, Raj,
you can see why those two sponsors and our other dudes are on vacation right now. We're sitting here, but we can all be drinking delicious Jack. If I didn't have to leave for Knoxville early in the morning, I'd be all over that. And I think that's why this week has been so stressful because I've been sober and that part has sucked.
I'm drinking the Yellow Jacket, the Coors Banquet. So
yeah, dude.
Figured I need one after tonight. So we're gonna get this thing going with NBA draft coming up tomorrow, and I think it's probably since LeBron the biggest no surprise who's going to go number one. Victor Wembanyama. I always seem to mess that name up.
I call him Wemby because I do the same.
Wemby, I think that's probably what they would call him anywhere else. But we got a quick little snippet of Mr. Wemby. We'll just go with Wemby.
They're not calling timeout. 10 seconds left. Got to go. Tremont Waters to the hoop. Lays it up. No. The follow. No. Wembanyama with the putback. That doesn't quite go for Tremont Waters against his buddy Wemby. There's that handle.
Oh, my.
Whew. Highlight, and here it is again.
I mean, that clip there, have you ever seen somebody with his size be able to handle or dribble the ball like that?
No, and I don't care about the knock on the competition and whatnot. The reality is he's one guy that at times, and I call him Wemby because it's kind of like Gumby. He's almost like a shapeshifter. I mean, he's the same guy, but he's 7'4". And on some plays, I have to do a double take because that looks like a 6'4" guard, like a 2 guard, the way he can handle the basketball and cross people up and smooth jumpers and one-handers. And then, of course, he's a rim protector. He's a guy that can guard kind of like Anthony Davis, but way more athletic in that he can guard multiple positions, but with the length and ferocity of a center, of a 5. Yeah, he is. I mean, I saw the guy split double teams, a 7'4" center, like see 7'4", and he's not built. It's amazing because when it comes to like anatomy and physicality and whatnot, I'm not going to personal air into historics, but back in the day, a 7'4" guy was a guy that was plodding, that was not Manute Bol. I mean, he was up there, but he could barely move. And then George Mirajan, these types of dudes. I mean,
they were post up. They were post up guys, 10 feet from the basket at the most.
If they were that, they came down for every other possession because they were still moving, in transition. This guy is just, I mean, people have been on him forever because he is literally a freak, like in terms of the ability. Like I said, he sometimes he looks like he's 7 feet tall, other times 6 feet. He looks like a 1. He looks like a 2. He looks like a 4. He looks like a 5. I've never seen anybody like this.
Well, if you look at how Nikola Jokic is crafts his game, we'll say similar style where he might bring the ball up the court and he might basically have the offense run through him, and then he backs down to the lane. So, but he's got a bit of a bigger body style. Is that one thing that concerns you? Like he just seems to be real thin. Do you think that maybe bodying up with some of the bigger big men might be a tough thing for him, especially coming from the French league?
15 years ago, absolutely. In today's NBA, no, I don't think so. I think it's just a wide open game with the way they're officiated. You don't see a lot of muscling and bodying. Garnett was a skinny guy, but he was also a mean dude with a different attitude. And certainly not French. Not trying to offend any French natives out there. But yeah, I mean, I think it would have, but he's also built differently. Like I said, you can kind of see guys like Zion or, even Durant with the consistent plantar fasciitis, Odin with those types of, that eventually that body structure and anatomy couldn't support their game.
Right.
He doesn't appear to be built that way, but then again, you can't deny or cheat God or Mother Nature. But his game just is so fluid. It's so different than I don't even think of that yet.
Well, who was the kid drafted last year out of, I believe it was Gonzaga, that real tall kid?
Chet Holmgren, yeah. And
Holmgren, yeah. He was, similar body style, and he gets hurt early on. He misses the entire year. I think that is probably the only concern, if there is one, with his game.
Realistically, I agree. I mean, there's a reason why 7'4" dudes don't do this very often. And it's not just because of talent or learned ability. He does appear to be built differently and moves differently and is a little bit more muscular, at least in frame and different places than Holmgren. But no, I agree. You're always taking a risk with that. And like we said, the freaks of nature like Durant and Odin and, Holmgren, those types of dudes, their body eventually, like their feet, can't support what they do. And that's obviously not clinical, but I agree. I mean, you got to be concerned about that. But I mean, I know that not enough to move on from this kid. Like said, he's the biggest hype since 2003.
Yeah, so they're saying he's a generational type player, probably the biggest prospect since LeBron. Would you agree with that assessment?
I am. But there's a lot of unknown here that adds to the mystique, the intrigue, him being French and 19 and hearing about him forever and playing in Europe where we don't see him every day. So there's certainly a lot that's unknown.
Well, we had a guy here in 2003 that we drafted that was from Serbia. He played professional in Serbia, and I believe he was 18 when he drafted Darko Milicic. And he just became the human cigar, basically, with the Pistons. And he had a big hype train behind him. European professional. He played professional ball for a couple of years before he came to the NBA. He had the fundamentals. It just never stuck. And now I don't believe that this will be the case with Wembanyama, but you have to wonder with some of these European players that, they fundamentally they're sound, but can they handle the aggressive play? Not that there is much aggressive play in the NBA, but it is faster and there's more skill involved. So does that concern, or should that concern any GM, specifically the Spurs, because they're going to take them?
I think it's something to think about. And you brought up a great point because, two things. Number one, thank God you guys won a title in 2004, because if not, that franchise would have burned to the ground. And it really said a lot about them having to seem like kind of build elsewhere and a lot from within and develop guys like Big Show, or what was Chauncey's name? Big Shot Chauncey.
Yep.
Yeah, there was also
Mr. Big Shot
Bob. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. But yeah, I think he would have been more of a punchline if Detroit didn't win a championship. But it made me wonder when you said that, like, what about him playing in today's game where he didn't get his ass kicked? Then, and really, I mean, because as you know, he's infamous because right after him were Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, all Hall of Famers. I'm trying to think of others. There wasn't a ton in that draft after
2003
him.
was definitely a good draft.
Yeah, the top of it sure as hell was. But yeah, I mean, that is a very interesting point. And with Darko, I know his injury history was there, but there certainly was a very abrupt difference between the European game then and the American game then.
Right.
Whereas now I don't think the difference is nearly as abrupt.
I agree. I think it's more predicated on offense. And if you breathe on a guy, there's a foul called. So these Europeans, and you're seeing it. You're seeing it with Luka, with Nikola. These guys are they're so fundamentally sound offensively, and they can play multiple positions. And I think that's a test to the way they bring these kids up in the European game. As far as I know, they really don't compete much until they're 14. So they're basically learning the game of basketball until they're ready to play. And then you do the flip side here. I mean, by the time they're 14, these kids they've got 1 million followers on Instagram, and they're being recruited already. So it's a little bit different culture with these Europeans coming over in comparison to the American kids. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the way the NBA is positioned now, it's a game designed for the European play, the fundamentals. And we all know that Adam Silver loves offense and not defense, clearly, because he changed the game after 2005, but I digress. So obviously that's the number one pick. So we can kind of dive into the next phase, we'll say, who per ESPN, Brandon Miller going 2 to the Hornets, Scoot Henderson to Portland, and then Amen Thompson, one half of the Thompson twins, and then Jarace Walker to the Pistons, which I'm not sure if I like that because we have about 5 guys on the roster already that play his position. So, Raj, would you agree with this sentiment here that Brandon Miller probably go number 2?
I think so. I think he's definitely a better fit for Charlotte than Scoot, but it seems like it'll be those 3 guys with one set and the other 2 flip-flopping based upon fit. But neither of those teams are very well known for making the smart decision. Let's just put it that way.
Well, if you go by this list, Scoot Henderson to the Trailblazers, there's a lot of rumblings that Damon might be moved. Miami, they're one destination that apparently is very curious about whether or not Portland will move him or not. So if they move Damian Lillard, Scoot Henderson, if they draft him, he automatically becomes the face of the franchise.
Absolutely. And it's ironic that Beal was finally dealt and the Wizards really screwed up their leverage and their overall package, which I know that we're going to discuss and that you know a lot about. But they should have traded Beal probably 2 years prior, and Portland really should have done the same. Lillard is 32 years old. Whatever they can get for him is dropping by the second.
Sure.
He already said he wants out. 2 years ago, they could have gotten so much for him, and they've just been that fringe team, frisky as well. They used to be, not anymore, but kind of in that, 6-7 seed every year, first, maybe second round playoff exit, but they never did enough to either get past or to regroup take one step back in hopes of taking 2 steps forward. They've just been status quo, and they've got to do something with Dame, in my opinion. You could have gotten a Paul George haul, or you can get, what the Wizards got, which really wasn't as nearly as much as they could have gotten a couple years ago.
Right. Yeah, we will hit on the Beal trade in a minute, but it seems like Washington maybe got fleeced in the situation. But sticking to the NBA draft tomorrow, one thing we always talk about, we talked about this in the NFL draft, is the speculation, so to speak, of possible gems, diamonds in the rough, players that aren't getting the hype, might get drafted a little bit later, but end up being really good NBA players. So, Raj, we decided we're going to pick 3. So what are your 3 hidden gems in this year's NBA draft?
That's a great question. And I've gone back and forth on this quite a bit. And to me, I define gem as a guy that you can pick now. And we talked about this on how a lot of guys get slept on. Maybe the guys that have been in college for 3 or 4 years. Because in basketball, it's a place where sometimes in football too, where, the combine can kind of erase or make people forget about on-field productivity. And never mind this over there, a la Anthony Richardson, but he ran a 4.2 and can jump out of the building. So basketball, the same things should be considered, right? And that's what I think of when I come to possible gems. And I look at a guy like the guy that I never would have said 3 years ago, because I've seen him play his entire. I thought he was slow. I thought he couldn't create. He's just a savvy, veteran, bucket-getting, high IQ player in Jaime Jaquez Jr. from UCLA. He's older, but he's just a guy that can create. He's not gifted athletically, but he's much quicker than you think. He's just, like I said, a savvy guy, a guy that's going to draw fouls with a number of pump fakes, great feet, just passing, you name it. Like I said, a highly intelligent player. He's a guy that can go to a team now and contribute. A guy like Christian Braun in Kansas came in and, showed a much more veteran presence. And in many ways was kind of, one of those extra pieces they needed to get over the hump. Another guy that we had talked about, and I started looking into, where people consider second round guys that probably should go first, and that collegiate production thing is Julian Strawther from Gonzaga. No, he wasn't consistent, but the offense has changed every year, and he went from, he was sort of asked to put the team on his back at weird occasions, it would seem, and he almost always delivered. He has a lot of game from basically 3 different places on the court. He can get to the basket. He's long. He's wiry. He can shoot. He's kind of got that moxie. He's not afraid of the moment. So I think Strawther's game will translate well to the next level. You and I, and along those same lines, 2 more. One, even though he doesn't seem to have, he's kind of like a jack of all trades, but a master of few or none, is Keontae Johnson, the kid from Kansas State that was at Florida. The great story, the collapse on court, but you could tell that guy has got a lot of it, the moxie, the heart. He's a great leader,
and he's been through a lot.
Just those intangibles on and off the court that you can't measure that stuff.
He's kind of a Donovan Mitchell-esque type of player.
Absolutely,
big body, but can shoot.
And he, along the same lines, I talking about the same thing. I was just thinking, Kwame Brown, the big ass kid from Mizzou. But overall, when I'm going down this list, a kid that had to do a lot at UCLA also. I can't believe I'm picking 2 Bruins and stepped up because of their injuries to Jalen Clark and God, everybody was hurt almost except Jaquez, but it was Amari Bailey. Amari Bailey was considered, a top 5 player nationally when he went to UCLA. He was considered a lottery pick. He didn't play as much early and didn't develop as much, but that's also because he was not used to not handling the ball, and they had a 4-year point guard in Tiger Campbell. Later in the year and in the NCAA tournament, he was outstanding. He was dynamic. He was not with the power of Russell Westbrook, but a very similar game, a similar trajectory out of UCLA that when asked, it just seemed like a different kid. And I think he's going to be sensational. He's far more athletic and gifted, especially in, the parting seas that is the NBA in the middle of the court. He's going to get to the basket and finish. And athletically, he reminds me of Zach LaVine, another guy that wasn't considered to go as high at a UCLA of Russell Westbrook. These 1-2 combo guards that can really bring a lot to the floor. And Amari Bailey, I would not be surprised, is on that first or second team all NBAA rookie team.
Yeah, I mean, you just never know. And the trajectory of certain kids, and then some things happen, or there's another flash in the pan that comes in. These guys kind of take the back seat. So my 3, Marcus Sasser out of Houston. This kid was really special coming in, and unfortunately, I believe he had a foot injury in the tournament that pretty much slowed him down. He's a senior. Big fan of these older upperclassmen. I just think when it comes to the NBA, it's maturity. And if they can be mature in that transition from the college game to the pro game, the game doesn't seem to be as big to some of these upperclassmen, and he fits that mold. Trace Jackson Davis from Indiana, this kid averaged 20, almost 21 a night, almost 11 boards a game and 4 assists. That's today's NBA right there. Kind of a 3-4 who can score. He can drive the lane, and he's aggressive on the defensive glass. So I look at him, mid-second rounder, also a senior. He was 4 years at Indiana, just kind of
a lot of instability around him. He was asked to kind of do a lot, especially every year when it comes to creating the, shot and whatnot. And again, he's a big kid, dude, like you said. And how big is he again? I forgot, because he moves. He is very versatile, like you said.
He moves like a 2 around the court. He's really, he's undersized physically, we'll say, but I think he's like 6'10", 6'11", but he's.
I think did you cut out on me or no? I cannot hear you, but you can hear me, so I'll keep going on that. No, I think in today's NBA, back in the day, the tweeners, I always talk about a guy named Sam Clancy out of USC that was basically a national player of the year, but there was no place for him in the NBA. It's 6'9" in the traditional 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 game. I think you're back. But in today's NBA, it's almost positionless in many respects. And a guy like Trace Jackson Davis, I completely agree. He is a hidden gem. And maybe it's because people expected more from him in some weird way, but they don't consider the circumstances around him and how it was very easy for teams to focus and collapse a lot on him. And I think there was a lot of unfair expectations that didn't evolve. And I agree, because he was once considered to be a top 10 pick easy. And suddenly he's not.
I apologize. I don't know what's going on. My camera went out 5 minutes ago, and on my microphone. Hopefully we're back. So yes. My third, I'll jumped right to my third one. My third guy is a local product, Imani Bates, Eastern Michigan. This kid was all the hype about 3-4 years ago, committed to Memphis, and it just seemed like trouble followed him wherever he was. And he decided to just kind of take himself out of the big schools. He chose to go to Eastern Michigan, right down the street from me. Had a nice season, averaged almost 20 points a game. He's a real streaky type of guard. He's not afraid to drive the lane. And I look at him as a situation where he was at the top recruiting and he got knocked down. And now he's building himself up. So I think that maturity could be a good thing coming into the NBA. I see him a late second round. I think that's what ESPN had him projected. So I look at a kid who had the world. He was going to go. He was a top 5 recruit, we'll say, and then it was gone for whatever reason. He wasn't prepared mentally, and he built himself up. And I think he's the type of guy that, Tim said he had a gun incident, but we'll see if he gets put with the right organization. That's going to sit him down and teach him not only the game of basketball, how to play in the NBA, but to teach him how to be a man. I think that could be a player 5 years down the road you look at as a steal in this draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is a side note, just something for people to think about, because we discussed how we don't have a definitive answer for this, but it used to seem like 70% of the NBA players came from 25 different schools. In this day and age, you've got first-round selections this year from Pepperdine and Santa Clara and Central Florida and Central Michigan and all over the place. And I'm not taking away from Bates when I'm saying this. It just brought me onto the topic because Bates made the decision, a very intelligent decision. We don't know about the recent alleged incidents about a gun. I don't know about that. But he did decide to go small school, and whether that was for whatever reason, it certainly didn't mean doom as for his future, as right. That would have meant that 20 years ago, and
oh, absolutely.
For whatever reason, you're seeing teams and schools all over the country come up with NBA talent now. And you and I discussed this too. We looked at kids like the Maxwell kid out of Pepperdine and Podiemski, I can't pronounce his name, Brandon Podiemski, the kid out of Santa Clara that are sophomores. And there's also these kids that sort of like, holy shit, did that kid develop and grow that much in the summer and off season, and suddenly was able to add, grow 6 inches and add these different elements of his game, and he's lengthy and today, and yeah, you could be rangy. That's a great thing, and have length, and today's positionless game, it makes you so versatile, and you're seeing those holy shit kids. And to me, like I said, that's counterintuitive to today's world of the transfer portal and almost, not having to anchor down anywhere. And these kids a lot of them are staying and saying, hey man, I grew up here. These coaches taught me, and I can go here or stay here and get drafted. And it just seems like it's, as the NBA has changed and left from that prototypical mold, we talked about tweeners and other things. It's just opened just doors to, all sorts of different basketball players and basketball games. It's like some type shit.
If you look at the tournament, for example, there's more and more of these lower tier schools that are going deep in the tournament. So eyeballs are getting on some of these kids from these, lesser known schools. So that kind of falls into place as to why this draft is more infiltrated with some of these schools that aren't, really known as basketball schools. It's just because I guess it's just the parity is a little more in college basketball, it seems, where college football, who's going to be there. It's going to be the same 5, 6, 7 team. In basketball, it's different every year, and I think that's the beauty of the tournament.
It certainly changed the Zoom levels, whereas, you'd have to be zoomed in on, like I said, X amount of schools and positions and players to just a wide frame shot of the game. And because you're right. Difference makers can come from anywhere, any position today.
For sure. So you're joining the Big Ten next year, your allegiance. And the Big Ten is known as the basketball conference, although they've been at this point for the past couple of years. But we're going to highlight some Big Ten players that could potentially go. Now, this is obviously per ESPN's latest mock draft. Michigan's Kobe Buffkin, 13 to Toronto. Jet Howard from Michigan. Jawan's kid going to the Lakers. We'll talk about that. Chris Murray from Iowa, another upperclassman for Iowa. And then Sensabaugh, who we talked about earlier, you and I, Raj, and Tex, as a top Big Ten guy that could potentially go. They've got him going first pick in the second round. So my take on Kobe Buffkin, I compare him a lot to Tim. Tim is our resident Buckeye fan, and I think he likes if Sensabaugh goes to the Pistons. But Buffkin is to me, I liken him to Jordan Poole. He's undersized. He's real streaky. He can shoot the three. He takes a lot of threes. Obviously, in Juwan Howard's offense, he can take a lot of threes. I gotta admit, I'm really surprised that they've got him going that high. I was unsure that he would even get picked in the first round. I was surprised when he decided to leave Michigan. There was a mass exodus from Ann Arbor, but Buffkin is just, I don't know if he's got the body or the size, but he can shoot, and that was Poole's situation coming out. I kind of felt the same way. I wasn't sure if his game would equate to the NBA, and it has up until late till he decided to mess around with Instagram models. But would you agree that Buffkin's maybe in that same mold?
Yeah, man. He and Koulibaly, the other French sensation, if you will, have been the two kids that have been shooting up draft boards during their team workouts, just showing in person what they can do. And, there's a lot less rigidity, if you will, in the offenses in the NBA, as we've said. For some kids, it's easier. It's in many respects just to show what they can do in terms of their game. And many people think Buffkin's game is going to translate really well. He's very athletic, very rangy, just another crazy wingspan kid. With Jet Howard, the Lakers, a lot of people see him going there mainly because he's a heck of a knockdown shooter, right? He's a catch and shoot guy. And the Lakers always need that, especially with everyone else on that team. I'd rather see a guy like Jordan Hawkins out of Connecticut go to them, a more proven shooter. But I guess we'll see. I didn't see enough of Jet Howard's game. To help out boy Sensabaugh, he's another beautiful example of a guy like Sam Clancy. He's 6'8", 6'9", 235, but just plays like he can play the two even with some of his shooting abilities. The three, the four, he doesn't quite get to the basket. He can certainly play the five with his size in college. But like another versatile kid, he's got an NBA body right now. So he can get on the floor now and learn and develop faster than other kids could, which really means that he can fit anywhere. And so that type of adaptability, if you will, is big in his appeal. I don't see a team that's going to be like, no, we couldn't use that guy in today's NBA. Hell yeah, you could. He's kind of like doesn't have the playmaking abilities and handles and vision of Draymond, but he's kind of like built like that, sort of. Like it's weird, but just a super high ceiling for Bryce Sensabaugh.
I look at that list, in Jet Howard, he hit the floor running his freshman year. There was a lot of hype to him coming in, and he lived up to it early on. Then he got injury. He got an injury, and that kind of set the team back. But then the team started to learn how to win without him. And then once he came back, they fell off. But I think he's got a very high ceiling. He's very athletic. He is the opposite of how his dad played. His dad was a post up guy, and that was it. He was going to get you rebounds and he's going to get you some points right below the bucket. So, what Howard is, you said it right. He's a catch and shoot guy, but he's got the ability to drive the lane, and he's still growing. I think out of those four, he's got potential. And if you sit him down, obviously LeBron's going to be there this year. After that, who knows? But if he can sit there and watch and learn from LeBron James, there's a lot of upside to the Lakers taking him. Obviously, he's got the pedigree with his dad. His brother never really amounted to a whole lot. I think he's still on Michigan, but I think he's got a lot of potential. Again, in the right system, with the right player to kind of like show him the ropes.
It's the kiss of death for freshmen to get hurt ever. But to me, especially before the season or early on or in the middle, it's when it comes to the development of their game. At the end, it kind of is what it is. But he obviously affected, like you said, the entire team continuity. Mm-hmm. And once he went down mid-season, that was a team early on that was beating giants and then just fell off. And we talked about, Michigan, if Dickinson were in this draft and hypothetically, if he were a first-round pick, it's just odd that they had such talent on that team and they certainly underachieved, but they had injuries and they happened to the wrong guys at the wrong time.
For sure.
Never a right time for injury, but you can see with a young team when their development will just completely stop and you just can't get back up to speed in time.
Speaking of Dickinson, I have my opinions of Hunter Dickinson. I think 3 years ago, he was a consensus lottery pick. And they got right up to the end and couldn't bring home the championship. And he came back, and I was shocked because that was the opposite of what most of these kids do these days. They go for the money. He decides to come back, and I think that was the biggest mistake of his basketball career because each year he's regressed, and then he hit the portal, and now he's going to Kansas. So if there's a coach out there that can kind of get him whipped up into shape, it is Bill Self. And I don't know. From what I've seen last year, I've never seen a guy miss so many baskets right at the basket. And maybe he can fix that situation. Maybe a change of scenery is right for him. But I just don't know. I don't know if this year is enough to get him back in the draft shape. But do you look at him as NBA prospect? He's not. He doesn't have the size for a center. And I don't think he has the athletic ability to play the 4 or the 5. Maybe I'm being overly critical of somebody that just underachieved here.
This is called irony because we talked about the changes to the game and whatnot. And a guy like Hunter Dickinson probably would have been much more effective in the league 15 years ago with his style of play and his game. And yeah, I think we saw that he is. He's like 7 feet tall, right? 6'11" or something. But
close.
He's slow. He's not agile. Doesn't have great feet. And I think in that tournament run, he got hot and he showed a lot more of his range and his ability to shoot the ball. He can shoot with both hands, but he was just on fire. Especially against Tennessee. His name is a bad name to Tennessee Volunteers. They're bad words to Vols basketball. But reality did set in. You're right. And not only could he not hit anything outside of 4 or 5 feet the last couple of years, it allowed teams to double, much closer to the hoop, and it killed their spacing. And then he's missing gimmies and bunnies, and they're contested. Whereas before you had to respect him from 10, 15 feet away from the hoop. You don't have to anymore. So, yeah, I absolutely think you're right that I don't know what he was thinking. In hindsight, it just seemed like he would get better, and that's why he came back. But, he had to know that he wasn't that great of a shooter and he couldn't create his own shot. And a lot of that was tournament swag, and I don't want to blame refs here, but he certainly got some nice treatment in those. He was a superstar in the NCAA tournament. He really was. He was, leading the bill on the CBS commercials on the lead-ins. He got a lot of favorable things went his way, including the basketball going in the basket. So yeah, you're right. And
he made a lot of noise doing podcasts and with his opinion of Michigan State, and I just feel like his mouth got in the way this year. He wrote checks that he just couldn't cash, and in the long run, he ended up transferring out. It wasn't a good look.
I mean, if you would have said after that NCAA tournament, oh hey, yeah, Hunter Dickinson's going to come back not for 1 but 2 more years and then transfer to Kansas, what do you think about that? Instead of being a lottery pick, I'd be like, yeah, you're fucking crazy. And
I was surprised that A, that he went to Kansas, and B, Kansas would want him. So they're kind of a high flying offense, and I don't know if he's got the build. We'll learn really quick. That conference is pretty strong. So
they've lost some guards and some guys that can help create. So it looks like they're going to be a little bit more outside in, but we'll see. You're right. That's going to be a change of pace for them.
And one thing we mentioned a little earlier ago, it was some of the upperclassmen. If you go down the mock draft this year and in previous years, a lot of the upperclassmen are late rounders or free agent picks. And is it because they've spent more time in college that tells some of these GMs that maybe they're not prepared for the game? Or why do you think it is that way with a lot of these upperclassmen? Like I said, I like some of these older guys because they're more mentally prepared for the game. But as far as the GMs are concerned, they don't look at it that way.
Yeah, I mean, we had that rhetorical discussion earlier because we don't know the answer, and that's why I say it's fairly rhetorical. In that, if you're not a true freshman and you're not taken right away, is that a bad thing for your NBA draft prospects, and is that a bad thing for your basketball career in general in the NBA at the next level? And those are two distinct and separate rhetorical questions. You look at a guy like Oscar Tshiebwe that I was surprised now he stayed in the draft because, yeah, he's a super effective college player, but his muscle and heart, dog in him, everything, rebounding nature, having that kind of bounce ability, they say, the way to see where the ball bounces. Yeah, that's huge, but he's just an overall sloppy player. If you look at his fouls and turnovers and bad screens being set, and there's kind of a reason why the NBA doesn't want him, and whether it's plotting and his body doesn't allow for him to be quick enough to do a lot of that stuff. Because really, if you're that size, you're going to be having to move quickly because the NBA is a big time high pick and roll league. Mm-hmm. What is it? But, does he have the feet to do that? And a lot of people think no, and that's why. But you're looking at a guy there that, like you said, I mean, who has been more productive than that guy in college? And maybe that's a bad example, but Jalen Pickett, the Penn State senior guard, Isaiah Wong, a guy I really like, the lengthy guard from Miami, both seniors. And it's just very interesting, as we've discussed, Jalen Wilson from Kansas. It's crazy to me how these guys are asked in the NCAA tournament to take the big shot and win a championship, and then be
on the biggest stage.
On the biggest stage, and then be like just a foregone conclusion that these guys are late second rounders. And, I'm just like, wow. And when I think about their game and I see what people are saying, that's one thing. But, we at this show obviously have a big time gripe about, the metrics and the scouts and combines and that crap versus seeing what a guy can do on the biggest stage under pressure. And those are the guys that we need to see more of, guys like you said, and guys like, Marcus Sasser, big time. I said Keontae Johnson, Jalen Pickett, the guy from Penn State, Strouder. It's going to be interesting. But, yeah, all those guys suddenly are, there's no doubt I've been scrolling like, oh, yeah, I'm wondering where this guy's going. And then, like, having to scroll down and scroll down. And I'm like, well, shit, doesn't, like, what he did on the floor matter at all? Like, sometimes you see scouting reports that it's the same when, AAU and those guys got their hands on them and started paying for their bios. And I'm going down that QAnon route. But, like you just don't see any kind of evolution in the description of the kid in their game. And that's like, wow, like the kid could play.
Yeah. Well, the flip side of that is some of these G League and the elite leagues, these kids decide from high school they're going to go and play in these leagues. What are your opinion of that? Because I've seen some Scoot Anderson, some Eamon Thompson. It's like street ball. And I don't know how weathered they are or how, fundamentally sound they are. They're athletic as all get up. They can't take that away from them. But how mentally prepared are they to go into the NBA? I saw a YouTube video of Scoot basically highlighting how he spent his first $1 million. And that mind space or that mindset kind of concerns me, especially that they have him going at number 3.
Yeah. I wasn't a big fan of that either. I mean, in the league that does so much along with the NFL to promote fiscal responsibility, the G League is kind of their baby. And yeah, man, like that was unnecessary to see that type of crap. And unfortunately, when you look at the G League, who do you think of? Kids that have gone that route. I know that, it's only been 2 classes or 3 classes, and I can really only think of, Jalen Green when it comes to guys that have really set the world on fire. Mm-hmm. And even that took time. Do I think Scoot isn't the same level? No, I don't. I think Isaiah Todd was another one, but, he's been thrown around as in drafts. Deshaun Nix, who's going to go to UCLA, he's sitting at the end of a bench. Jonathan Kuminga looked like he was going to do something at Golden State.
Yeah.
Basically about to be traded. It doesn't seem like those that have really sacrificed college, the pageantry and whatnot, that it seemed like a real threat to a game that we all love, college basketball.
Right.
It doesn't seem like the G League is much of a threat. And I thought, I'm not labeling Scoot or anybody else, but I thought a lot of kids did it for the money because their family needed it or because they didn't want to take a risk or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But, maybe it showed immaturity on that level and sort of was an ad for why going to college is important. But long story short, it doesn't seem like it's developing. Like you said, it seems more street ball, and the G League hasn't improved or disproved anybody's status per se or stock. But it's certainly shown that kids that have gone to the league are less developed than those that have gone to college for whatever reason. And it likely is that responsibility. I don't know what the inside of the G League looks like, but not impressed.
My personal opinion, not that it matters or anybody cares, but I always think that it should be set up similar to basketball or even college baseball. You got to commit 3 years. And I think that's the maturity process. I think the NBA is watered down. There's a lot of teams that are filled with players that they're the same player. And skill level they probably shouldn't be in the NBA. Maturity level, they probably should be in the NBA. And that's just because they go to Kentucky, they do a one and done. Or they go to another school and they do a one and done. And their ability, their talent gets them to the NBA, but they're not mature enough to prosper in the NBA. And I think that's what's wrong with today's game. That's my opinion. I'll get off my soapbox. And
I get it. It seems like in today's world of NILs and whatnot. I understand the need that many, especially when we consider basketball, where it's most densely played and the resources needed aren't like a golf or other sports. And, oftentimes financial need does play a role in these things. And that's why, that this was an alternative to 18-year-olds to having to go to college back in the days when Kobe and those kids could declare. But for every Kobe and Garnett, there were hundreds of Kwame Browns. But yeah, I'm against a restriction in that sense, but there are often other things at play. But whatever it is, the G League hasn't really done what I thought it would do for 18-year-olds. And I don't think it's as a threat to college ball as we once thought it was.
No.
And even further proven by, like we said, guys that even though they're sophomores, guys going to Pepperdine and UCF and Central Michigan and Santa Clara and getting drafted in the lottery.
Yep. I mean, you're like I said earlier, you're seeing it with the emergence of these teams coming into the tournament and making noise. So again, the draft tomorrow night. We'll hit on this next week. The boys will be back next probably Wednesday or Thursday, Brandon and Robbie, and I'm sure we will talk about picks, potential trades. There's a lot of trade rumors. My Pistons, will they keep the number 5? There's a lot of talk around here of Zion Williams. I know the Pelicans are potentially looking to move him. I'm a little iffy on that. I don't know. He doesn't seem to stay healthy, but when he's on the court, he's productive. So a lot of answers or questions will be answered next week, and we'll hit on that next week. But still sticking with the NBA, we're going to talk about this one right here.
What a play by Bradley Beal.
That his athleticism was off the charts like this.
What a pass. Chris Paul to Busy, rolling for 2. What a sweet feed by...
Close-up. He doesn't have those dreads anymore.
Yep, the trade of Bradley Beal to the Suns. The Fighting Ishbias out in Phoenix. He keeps throwing more money. Gets Bradley Beal. So that makes 4 guys now that are going to be on the starting court, not mentioned Ayton. They're going to be fighting for the ball. Chris Paul goes to Washington. And I know he was a little unhappy, actually heard the news from his son, sent him a text message, said, "Hey, Dad, did you hear you were traded to Washington?" So he's a little uptight about that. Landry Shamet goes to Washington as well. Now it seems that the Wizards are looking to already move Chris Paul, and the likely destination could be the Clippers. Do you see that happening, and is that the right fit for Chris Paul?
Robbie and I will wax on the fact that Chris Paul is going to go to the Lakers at prime of his career, and Dan Gilbert and other whiny players complained about a monopoly and teams getting a big 3, and it was a perfect fit at the time. That's with the Kobe days, and that never happened. And now he's a 38-year-old point guard who's due $30 million this year and $30 million next. Only half of it's guaranteed for this coming year. There is no way he stays on Washington.
No.
After that point, you're right. But it's like the Lakers and the Clippers. Do they really need an older player? Yes, Chris Paul is an amazing pass first, one of the purest point guards ever. However, he gets hurt all the time. He's not going to play a full year. His defense is certainly suffering. I would take him, but it would have to be at a reduced rate for sure, because you may get half a year out of a 38-year-old.
Well, I mean, look at this year. He pulls a groin right in the start of the playoffs, and he's not available. And how much of that injury hurt Phoenix?
Oh my God, everything. When you have two shooters that you know need a fair and equal pure point to get them the ball right where they want it, you know, and not force the ball to either. I mean, he was the key to those deals, and it's also why, even though Phoenix didn't have to give up much, like I'm not sure who's going to be like the point guard here, but I guess we'll see. But yeah, in terms of, you know, a landing spot, you know, he could go back to Phoenix on a cheaper contract, like you said, the Clippers.
And they need a bench. They have no bench.
Nothing, and he's going to have to be very cheap. Boston would be another place there he could go and play, not be asked to do too much, and be that pure point that they need. I've heard Miami. You know, we don't know about Kyle Lowry, and Gabe Vincent is, you know, sometimes he looks more like a 2 than a pure point, that's for sure. And maybe even Philly, you know, that another team that has scores. So you're looking at teams that have pieces and maybe that have guys that are handling the ball too much that could benefit from a savvy veteran that is completely pass first and will get the ball where they like it. But
it's kind of an old school
the right price tag. And Chris Paul's got to understand he's not getting $30 million anymore for being 40 at that position. It's not happening.
So do you think Beal will fit in nicely with this Phoenix offense, or are they going to have a situation? KD wants the ball. He's the number one, and then it kind of goes down the list from there. So he's a scorer, and that video showed. I mean, the guy can drive the lane. He's very athletic. He's the prototypical today's number 2. He's going to want to score. So is there going to be problems in Phoenix with handling who's going to shoot the ball more?
Yes, because there's only one basketball, and now they have 3 guys that are volume shooters that can all score for 40 on any given night, and no pure point guard. Devin Booker is not a point guard.
No.
I don't care what people say. Cameron Payne is the closest thing, but he's obviously limited. I didn't understand the deal on either level. Again, Washington should have traded him years ago. I don't know what Phoenix is doing because now they've got nothing for a bench, and we all know how that happens, like you said. But no, I was very shocked by that because the last thing they needed was another scorer. So none of this really made sense to either team for me, from my perspective. I don't think anybody won.
Do you think Andre Ayton is in the starting rotation starting next year, or do you think maybe he's a name that they could kind of move and get some pieces along the way?
They better trade him because there's no place for him in that offense, and he knows it. Plus, he's a bad clubhouse guy. His attitude shows, and you can see the guy sulk. You know, that's their only asset they have right now, really, that is young and has potential, that's still on the upswing, more or less. You know, he's 24 years old, and in the right offense, you know, he can do very well. But like you said, you know, Phoenix getting another scorer is like Detroit getting another big guy, like a 4 or 5. They got like 30 of them, and they don't need them. Like, they're not addressing what they need, and I don't know what the hell they're thinking. I really don't.
And then I hear today that the Pistons are calling Philly, inquiring about Tobias Harris, who is a good ball player, but he was here already. He played here, and he plays a position that they don't need. I just hope Troy Weaver gets it right. He hasn't gotten it right in the draft. I think Cade Cunningham has been very suspect. Number 1 pick 2 years ago. He's played probably 3/4 of one season. Last year, he missed about 90% of the season from an injury that I don't even know. They're saying it was like a calf injury or something, and he missed. It's been a very big disappointment. So Another trade that went down late tonight, or I don't think it's finalized, but the pieces are there. Kristaps Porzingis going to go to Boston. It's a 3-way deal. The Clippers are going to get Brogdon from the Celtics, who had a really nice playoff run.
Wow.
The Wizards, Marcus Morris, the Morris brothers. I think they're the most traded tandem ever in the history of the NBA. They've probably played on every NBA team between the two of them. Amir Coffey, Gallinari is a possibility throw-in with Washington, and they're also going to get the 30th pick, which will be the last pick of the first round in this year's draft. So Washington seems like they're in a full-out rebuild. Chris Paul will not be there. He'll be traded just like John Wall when he came to the Pistons last year. So they're freeing up money. They're getting some young guys. So it'll be interesting with that.
What are the Clippers giving up there? You know, it's interesting though that Brogdon was just signed from Indiana by Boston on a 2-year to be that missing piece, to be that bench guy. Played in every game, didn't start. You know, he was a lot of glue, man, like 4-4 type guy, many different tools. So for them to turn around and trade him right away that's very interesting.
Right. And does that kind of paint the picture that they're not going to go after Chris Paul? Seeing they're bringing in a guard here, an athletic guard that can score.
You know, I wouldn't call Brogdon he's more of a hard nose. I wouldn't call him a pure point by any stretch. You know, a guy averaging 3 assists per game or 4 assists, whatever. Sure, a lot of that's with the second unit, but you know, Marcus Smart is a guy that's going to look to pass first, but he's a guy that can play all over. But you know, one thing about Brogdon is he kind of does some of the same things Derek White does, and I think they envisioned him doing more and differently and being a better shooter, but he wasn't. So it was an experiment. I guess it didn't work out, but yeah, as you can tell, I'm so confused by that. I'm kind of talking my way around in that respect, and I'm avoiding your question, but what are the Clippers getting out of this again? You said, I'm sorry.
They're getting Brogdon.
What are the Clippers giving up? Because Chris Paul is their only pure point. Because right now it's Smart, Brogdon, and technically they'll even list Derek White as a point. But none of those guys are real point guards. We all know that. So having a pure point would help. Maybe anchor them the way Lowry did in Miami. Yeah. So I think it'd be a great fit. But what are the Clippers giving up here? Because that's what I'm failing to understand. I guess
Morris, Coffey.
Yeah, Amir Cop. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how these things always seem to work out for the Clippers. They don't ever win, but it's just like, dude, how do they make these deals?
Well, when your owner, Steve Ballmer, local Detroiter, who has more money than like 10 owners combined, the guy's ridiculous. He could just take chances, but who knows?
I knew he was a Detroiter from the first time I watched him courtside.
Funny story. There's like 6 owners in the NBA that are local or have an affiliation with the state of Michigan. It's pretty crazy. And our owner, T-shirt Tom Goris, not a fan. He's a disaster, but I digress.
All of them made their fortunes elsewhere back in the day, which
absolutely,
sadly.
From one shit story to another. Man, Bob Huggins. How mighty they fall. He resigns this week after a DUI charge. Did you happen to see his blood alcohol level?
No, man, I did not.
It was like 0.21 or 0.22. I don't know. How did he even find his car to begin with? He should have never even be able to find his keys at that point. But that's his second DUI. He got one when he was coach of. He was a Cincinnati coach, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah. So I think it was 2002 was his first DUI, and then this is on the heels of a rather shocking comment that he made on live sports radio about the Xavier University, which caused the school to basically take $1 million from his salary, and then 5 weeks later, he's without a job. Bob Huggins, very animated, a lot like Bobby Knight. He didn't really care what people thought. Didn't care what people, what he had to say. He's unfiltered, kind of an old school guy. Where does he list as far as some of the greater coaches in college basketball?
I mean, there's no doubt the guy can coach, and in a certain style, he's kind of a Bobby Knight-esque, but even Bobby Knight had class to him, and Bob Huggins is not.
No.
As I told you, I as an Indian kid and son of a doctor, I didn't want to go to medical school. I knew that wasn't my route. And the University of Cincinnati was a first-tier law school that gave me a free ride, and I thought, hey, why not? Going from La Jolla to Cincinnati, Jack and Cokes were $3. I could deal with this for free for 3 years, except for my my living expenses. But the first day when they meet with the law school dean, and I've told this story before, and they basically had a chart structure, and it goes to the law school dean, they answer to the board, and then the board answers to Bob Huggins, like as a joke over the whole university. And that's when Kenyon Martin in Cincinnati was #1 team in the country, and the basketball program was top 3 in the country. And he could do whatever he wanted to. And it sure as hell seems like he's kept that attitude wherever he has gone, whether it be Kansas State, or I think for, kind of worked his way back. And West Virginia is one of those programs in that state where they want to win, and they are willing to sacrifice a lot of things. So they know when you're at 0.21, and I just saw some things about how wasted he was and how he said he was like in Columbus and tried a 3-point turn and almost backed into a wall, shredded a tire, didn't know his name type thing. Or, yeah.
The disturbing thing about the live situation was the radio guys, they played into it, and they kept it going.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, oh, there's no one better than good old Coach Bob. It's like, where's your class? Where's your moral compass? Because after that point, the radio station should have pulled a plug on the interview. It kept going, and it just maybe it's just the culture, the nature of West Virginia, that they don't really care about what is being said as long as there's production being done on the court. But yeah, I mean, that was pretty bad look all together. And the fact that he kept his job after that speaks volumes in a whole nother chapter.
It's sickening. And yeah, you can tell that West Virginia is one of those places where transfers have always gone, even between the portal and, people have kind of accepted anything about your past because they want to win. That they'll love kids on the team regardless of race, but they'll say otherwise off the court. And this is just from actual accounts that I've read and heard. Certainly historically, those guys certainly they were starstruck. I mean, that's for sure. Those announcer radio guys, because he could have said anything about kicking puppies or anything, whatever it may have been, and they would have chuckled it up and that's old coach.
And they did. And it was
it was really sickening, and there's just a lack of sense or standards of what is right and what is wrong, and again, it speaks a lot to what they're willing to sacrifice and in order to win. And obviously that whatever it was, finally they saw the light, and it makes me wonder what he has gotten away with. Because I know for sure at Cincinnati he did all kinds of dirty shit, and only finally had to part with the university. And in this type of case, West Virginia, I mean, they can look the other way when he uses a homophobic slur, also religious bigotry in one statement, but then they can look the other way. But when you have a DUI, I guess, in public, and cops and public record, and like I said, all these people saw him, and it was probably in his neighborhood, his complex, he probably wouldn't have gotten even a ticket. It doesn't matter when it comes to that stuff, let alone at his BAC. it's just unforgivable, and they didn't have a choice, I guess. So, like I said, it makes you wonder what he did get away with there. But it's just sad. It's fitting, and thank God no one was hurt.
Sure, absolutely.
And in that sense, it's certainly karma for Bob Huggins, because you're not better than that, and that's sort of like one of God's laws and God's standards: drinking and driving, and you're not going to get away from that.
Yep. Sooner or later, that train's gonna catch you.
It does, and we've all had our wake up calls, and that's not something I would ever. We've all done things when we were buzzed, especially when we were younger, and we're fine, no worries, dude. Like, we joke about it. But live long enough, and it'll affect you, whether personally, when it comes to being, you the subject, other friends being victims or arrested, whatever it may be. It's so easily avoidable, and it's so not worth it, especially in this day and age of ride share 100%. And everything. I mean, it leaves one of the few things that leaves me speechless now, but I've been personally affected as well. So he's an asshole, and he's getting what he deserves. I just thank God that he did not hurt anyone else on that night. And like I said, in years past, they probably would have covered it up, in Cincinnati and West Virginia.
So real quick answer, will he coach again in college basketball?
Division I, no. Could he go D2 or D3? I mean, what is he, 69? No, I mean, I can't see him getting maybe NAIA local, some shit. Somebody will, we got Bob Huggins. He's reformed. He's, but God forbid he ever get a job in D1. No. Yeah. No way.
Sure. Well, are you ready? Are you ready for the next segment?
Ooh.
Are you prepared? Because it's that time.
It's time for Bet Your Nuts.
That's right. It's Bet Your Nuts, where we give you the bet, you take it, and you make some money. Raj, what do you got this week?
There wasn't much for money making. I was going to bet against the Dodgers tonight because Shohei Ohtani was on the mound, and the Dodgers have more guys on the IL than I've ever seen. 7 guys this year, as we put on our Reckless Speculation Twitter page, have made their debuts, MLB debuts, not debuts with the Dodgers, which is sad. Michael Grove was pitching, who's got like an 8 ERA against Ohtani. Right now it's 1-0. So my over bet, I didn't make it. So we're going to go with that. I was trying to think of NBA draft bets. I really like Derek Lively, the center from Duke, to Dallas, if he's still on the board. I think that's a great bet. I've seen that prop bet. That would be him at number 10. Others, a lot of Laker fans believe that it's a lock that they will get Hawkins from Connecticut, but he's shooting up draft boards. I don't think he'll be there, but I don't have much of a bet, but I know the Lakers need a spot shooter. So I'm saying either Hawkins or Howard for the Lakers at 16.
All right.
That's a shitty bet, dude. So they also need a big power forward and another guy that could drop. I'd love to get Grady Dick, but
you just want to have that jersey.
I definitely would have loved to have, dude. Like number 11.
Just love that name.
Number 11, Dick. A couple phallus-looking numbers there. I needed to say that for emphasis, but I would love to have a Dick jersey. I think it would be fitting. I got nothing.
It'd be a huge sale for the Lakers, I'm sure.
No shit, dude. Off season is usually you guys coming up with racing and golf and bets, so I don't have to do much until football. So I forgot about that part.
I'm gonna go tomorrow night baseball up in San Francisco. They got the Padres playing the Giants. Blake Snell's on the mound for the Padres. Alex Wood's on the mound for San Francisco. I'm going to go San Francisco money line plus 100. They're a good home team. San Diego, just for whatever reason, they're very hit or miss. They're hot and cold, so they've been a roller coaster the last couple of years. I like San Francisco in that one. And then to go NASCAR, give me Kyle Busch plus 750 to win. I know Robbie would like that pick. I avoided his Larson pick. He's the favorite, but I'm going to go Kyle Busch.
The Giants have won. They're 9 in a row. They've won 9 out of the last 10, obviously, and they just swept out in LA for the first time in like 10 or 11 years. They're hot, man, and Webb and Wood they keep you in every game. And they called up Luis Matos, I believe. Matos, I can't remember, but they're hitting, man. And LA, with our injuries, we fell to 3rd in the division, which is sad. But
yeah, they'll be back.
San Francisco right now has got a lot of guys like Wood and Webb that'll keep you in every game. I hope we'll be back. We're getting some guys back tomorrow, starting with Muncy. But I love that bet, man. I'm going to actually put money on that. That's a good bet.
All right, perfect. Well, we're going to go into the final segment tonight, and again, we're missing Robbie and we're missing Brandon, who are enjoying their beach vacations. I'm sure we are very jealous here as we're now hour and 21 into it. I know Robbie would be just cringing right now if he were here, but Raj, you got some final words tonight.
Yeah. Oddly enough, I'm going to keep this one brief, which is probably why we went over. But this is going to be a crazy draft. And we try to come up with inventive segments, player comps, things that we didn't even have time to get into. Guys like Grady Dick being like identical to Kyle Korver, but, being more athletic. But this is going to be a crazy draft. And we didn't want to be run of the mill because a mock draft this year would be the dumbest shit ever. Because it's just going to be.
We tried that with the NFL, and look what happened with that.
This is going to be times a million when it comes to that. Like I believe, the same 7 teams have 17 picks. I think 30. We discussed earlier of 30, which is like 56, 57%. The Pacers have 7, 26, 29, 32. Houston 4 and 20. Detroit has 2 picks, correct? They have
5 and 31.
5 and 31. Portland has 3 and 23. Utah has 9, 16 and 28. Brooklyn 21 and 22. Charlotte 2 and 27. That's over like 60% of the draft right there. And that's not going to happen. Those guys are not going to keep drafting. They're going to keep rebuilding. They're going to flip those into assets, let other teams want to jump up. All of those teams that are trying to move up and just get that extra piece. So there's going to be crazy trade activity tomorrow, teams moving up. And then what about stars that, there's been a lot of smoke around guys for years. Lillard, we saw Beal getting dealt, Paul, John Collins in Utah, Clarkson, I believe he's a free agent, but Colin Sexton in Utah.
Yep.
There's a lot of talent there. The 2 guys, a big team to watch is Toronto. Attaboy and Pascal Siakam. Are they going to stay there? Because they're rebuilding. That between the good guys that need to be moved and those teams that want to get up and the same 7 kind of bottom feeders having all those picks, there's going to be a shitload of activity tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So after the first 3 picks, which even that order is not guaranteed, Wemby at 1 is all that's assured.
Oh, sure.
It's just going to be a freaking total shit show, and don't even bother mocking because you're wasting your time.
For sure. Well, my final words tonight are baseball is back. It was, I believe, the second weekend in a row this past weekend where it was like 1.5 million fans went to games. And it was, I forget the total amount. It was the highest number consecutive weekend in like the last 10 years. And I attest this to the fact that you have teams like the Cincinnati Reds who won their 11th game in a row today. The Arizona Diamondbacks, who have one of the best offensives in baseball. Pittsburgh Pirates. This team is exciting. They're right in the midst of the NL Central. There's a lot of teams that, I'll use your term, bottom feeders, that are exciting. And if
Baltimore crushing it, great
yes,
baseball towns.
There's a lot of teams that they're great sports. They're great baseball cities. Cincinnati is a perfect example. They've got a really good fan base, but they just haven't had anything to cheer about. And coming into this season, who would have thought that they would have anything to cheer about? But De La Cruz comes up. This kid's unbelievable. He's been as advertised. Joey Votto comes back from 10 months being out. His first game, he hits a home run. This team is exciting to watch, and they're young.
Pitching, man. The pitching's like coming out of nowhere, but it's a great point, man. I of course go to my LA Dodger roots because we had a weekend series with the Giants, which you had 50,000 every night, literally. LA leads baseball in attendance, but it's because our stadium is so big and we still fill it. Yep. But we also had the Yankees the weekend before, and that was 53,000 every night. So that helps. Those numbers.
Sure.
But you're absolutely right, man. There used to be just empty ballparks, and that's not the case anymore.
Today in Houston, Wednesday game, they were giving away a replica ring. 38,000 at the Minute Maid for a day game. That's impressive. That's really impressive. Now, it's indoors. Are they going there to beat the Heat? Maybe, but hey, it's exciting. Even my Tigers, they go to Minnesota the past weekend. They take 3 of 4, the first place team, and they take 2 of 3 against Kansas City. This is a team that no one gave a snowball's chance in Hades to do anything. They're not going to, but they're fun. They're exciting. They're going to lead the league in being shut out, but man, they came back with vengeance today, scored 9 runs. So I guess my overall point is baseball is coming back. I think fans are excited. The pitch clock, the time of game, I think, has really changed a lot of people's perspective of going to games instead of sitting through a 4-hour, 3.5-hour game, which I have no problem with. But the average, run-of-the-mill fan doesn't want to do that. So it's changed. The average time of a game is like 2 hours and like give or take a few minutes. So to someone that's looking for something to do during the week or on a Friday night, like, hey, it won't take up my entire night. So I think that's a lot to do with it. And again, some of these teams that are just young and exciting and fun to watch. So,
hey, the Angels, another team, a lot of front runners in OC, but they're winning and people are coming out. They're selling out right now because the Dodgers are there, but that's usually 90% blue, just like in San Diego, and it's not anymore. So people are showing up, man, and you're right. It's
exciting.
There's more parity, and it's kind of the opposite of the NBA. Those young draft picks are they're giving chances to other teams. You can rebuild, whereas the NBA, it's the same, like 10 teams with that many picks are going to still have those picks next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, we're going to wrap it up tonight. Raj, this was fun, just the two of us. We'll be looking forward to next week when we'll have the crew back. Don't forget to like and follow all the socials that have been strolling across the bottom of the screen. Again, thank you so much for Davis and Keller, attorneys at law, and C&W Construction for being sponsors for our show. And with that being said, we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Reckless Speculation. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube, searching Reckless Speculation. Catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We look forward to catching you right here next week with another exciting episode of Reckless Speculation. Cheers.